So it is a real joy and a humbling experience to be with you. Just to be encouraged through everyone who I speak to with during this time is amazing. So thank you for having us. We are really enjoying it with Sylvia. My name is Tomas. Sylvia is my wife. You will see our kids on the picture later on. I am a bivocational guy. I'm a church planter in Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia, but I still work as a medical doctor. I'm an anesthesiologist 1 day a week, and the same amount of time I work for a ground ambulance service as a pre-hospital emergency medical guy. I started off as a physician in helicopter emergency services for 9 years. And during that time, when we were still living in another place, which you will see on the map in Nitra, we were called to church planting, and I will share a little bit about that during my talk. So thank you. But before I do that, let me read from where we left off yesterday in Acts 1, because since you all are Europeans, I think you all feel that it's really, really easy to be discouraged in our mission, in our evangelism in Europe. And so, let me pick up from verse 8. But you will receive power, that's Jesus speaking, when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. And then comes the part, I think, which is the high point of Luke's telling in his 2-volume work, when he speaks about the ascension of Jesus. That's the only thing which he mentions also in the Gospel and also in the book of Acts. He does that on purpose, because that's where the Gospel is going, with Jesus ascending, and that's out of which everything else is flowing out, with Jesus on the throne. So let me read that. And when he said these things, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. And while they were gazing into heaven as he went, behold, 2 men stood by them in white robes, and said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand and looking into heaven? This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven. It does give us the necessity of mission and the possibility of mission. It's necessary because it's the last age, the last era that he's ascended, and the last thing that will happen in the history of salvation is that he's coming back. So it's necessary for us to be on mission. But the really encouraging part is that it's possible because he is on the throne, that Jesus is on the throne. And so that encourages me, and I hope it encourages everyone as we seek to be on mission wherever we are in our countries. For us, it happens to be Slovakia. This is a face that you will, many of you will probably know, and he is still on track. I'm his disciple. I'm his son. So this is my father, Jan. I believe, Paul, you were his classmate, and you were while in London. So he sends his greetings. This is the Slovak SGA kind of face that you probably know, most of you. And I will tell you a little bit about the country. It's a very small place compared to most of the other ones that we heard about today. As you see, it's somewhere in the middle of Europe, and that makes it just tells you who we are, because Slovaks can really we don't know who we are as Slovaks. We don't know if we are east or if we are west, and we're neither north or neither south. Slovaks always have struggled with this identity problem. We're always part of something bigger. For 1,000 years, we were part of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. So, Slovakia was just a lump of land, part of something bigger. And then after the First World War, we were part of the Czechoslovakia. Of course, everyone knows Prague. But hey, Slovaks, who are they? And so since 93, we've been on our own, which is great. But who are we? We don't know, and it's really hard to figure out. What makes a Slovak Slovak? And so it is really hard to reach out to people, for people to understand themselves. We're very negative about ourselves, being small-minded. We do feel like we're the backwater of Europe in a sense. Although, of the last 20 years, we've developed. We're a modern nation state. So this is the kind of identity problem that we face in Slovakia. And when you talk to us, you'll probably figure that out. That, these guys don't know. It borders Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Austria, and Ukraine. So you'll have the West, Austria, and then you have the East, Ukraine. By the way, we always feel like we're Central Europe. So whoever from the West says that we're Eastern Europe, we always get offended. But we won't this weekend. We do feel that there is a Central Europe also, not just East and West. And also the Polish and the Czechs are that way too. So that's one thing that we do know about ourselves. Slovakia is a place which is very religious. In the last census, 70% of the country would tick their Christian box. That would mean Roman Catholic. Still, that's the largest religious group. The Pope loves us. He was just there in Slovakia, I think 3 weeks ago. So Slovakia is considered his flock, and he's doing it really well, looking from his point of view. And actually, the Catholicity in Central Europe is not really dying out as much as it is in the West. It's still quite prevalent. The evangelicals would number around 10,000 in a country of 5 million. So that is not much. But that is not the problem. The problem that we see in Slovakia is not that how many evangelicals do you find, but I think the problem is whether that number, whatever it is, if it's 10,000 or 5,000, doesn't really matter. But is it growing or is it not growing? And that's a big question. If we figure it out, if we were to be evangelicals 1% of the population, it would take us, in the growth rate that we are now, it would take us 2025 years. Not in the year 2025, but in 4045. So that's just too far away. To 2,000 years to just reach 1% of the population in the rate of evangelical growth, and we do fear that post-COVID, that growth is even slower. So I would say there are quite a few of these smaller countries in Europe, such as Slovakia or various former Yugoslavia countries, which share this kind of similar background and similar kind of growth in evangelical Christianity, meaning that it would take thousands of years to reach 1% of populations if nothing changes, if things stay as they are. So we're part of the Free Church denomination in Slovakia. It's 16 churches. The whole denomination numbers around 1,800 members. So it's quite spread out, as you see. Some of the churches are quite small, some of them are bigger. But looking at just the numbers and where we are, during communism, it was it was easier to start a church. Well, they weren't started in communism, but they existed outside of the cities. It was easier to live outside of the cities as a Christian. And so the bigger churches tended to be in smaller towns. Whereas, we're 30 years past communism now. Things are changing. And these bigger churches in the smaller cities are getting smaller. And new churches need to be started. But how does that even come to your mind if you've lived in an era where there's no church planting, when there's generations of people who've never even had the thought of starting a new church? So how does that thought even come to your mind that churches are started? There are swaths of Christians who've just had the church there. They never realized that this city had the time pre-church, and now they were just there in their lifetimes. And so that was the situation which we, as we grew up in, and never really thought about new churches. But through various God's ways, we can talk about it maybe later in the evening, there was a group of us younger guys who realized, yes, we do need to start churches. The first generation of church planters all crashed in mainly in their marriages. That was the way that Satan used. They were really the pioneers, and out of the three that started off in the 90s, all of them ended up either in divorce or a huge marital crisis. So that was the first wave of church planting, and that was the situation which my generation of church planters came into. So we knew that we need to learn, then that we need to work together, collaborate. And so in the denomination which we're part of, we brought together a group of like-minded younger pastors like myself, and we started a working group called Plant Escape, and with a desire to help each other as church planters, not knowing how, not knowing to whom, because we don't know who the Slovaks are, we don't know who we are. So to help each other, to spur each other on, to help the churches. Churches were very protective to the idea of new churches, of sending out teams, or that was a very scary thing for many churches to do. But we did want, the subtitle there is that we do want community of people mirroring God's glory in every place, every town in Slovakia. That was why we started. And the three things that we looked at and started developing was our ABCs, which we thought was assessment, because we inherited the situation where we knew that not everyone who wants to be a church planter should be a church planter, because we've seen so many crashes and people not making it. And so there are things which a church planter is, and we need to assess well so that we protect them and in their faith and their family and everything. Also basic training that we've developed and provide to all the church planters, and then ongoing help, ongoing coaching. We started off in Nitra, which is here. That was our first church plant, and that was the church plant which we replanted 10 years ago when we moved in there. And at the same time, there was a guy that you support as well, Erwin in Košice, who was pretty much at the same time starting in Košice. Again, all bivocational guys, weak guys. Erwin is seriously ill. I can talk about him later, so that you can pray more specifically for him. And then church plant north in Žilina and Trnava. And then 3 years ago, our new church plant in Bratislava, which Nitra church plant became the mother of, and sent us to Bratislava. So you could say, yeah, after 5 years, there's a huge change. We had 16 churches. Now there are 5 church plants, which is wonderful. We praise God, and it's been really encouraging. But we realized that yes, we worked with people who were kind of ready for the church planting, who were self-grown, and God just brought them up and made them ready. But if we are to reach the country with more church planters and more teams, and with various churches very hesitant about sending their teams, we do need to equip more church plants and more teams. And so we started thinking about an imprint, where we started publishing books, 4 books a year. We call that Reformatio. And then a Slovak chapter of the Gospel Coalition website, where we publish an article every day, either by a Slovak author or translated from the various foreign websites of Gospel Coalition. So these 2 resources mean that we can be building up and equipping younger leaders and generations of guys who can later on be church planters. We've realized that we need to start really, really early with people who are around 15. We're kind of lowering the age who we focus on and where we start, because once you get a mortgage, once you settle, once you build your own house, Slovaks don't move. They stay put, and it's an act of God's miracle to relocate them somewhere else. And so those are really, really hard to get on your team and move somewhere else. So we need to go, okay, so we need to go maybe students. But students have their own ideas during student life, and if they enter university and they're just full of, they're not really set on making good use of their university years. So we need to start earlier. And so part of the youth work in Slovakia, we started a network for during a big youth conference. We do a network for just geared towards equipping younger leaders and to be bringing them up, coaching them, training them, inviting them for various things. A new thing that we've also started in our church in Bratislava is an apprenticeship program. For you in UK, apprenticeships are everywhere. Not so in Slovakia. There was none, basically 0. And so we've been learning how to do apprenticeships well for younger guys and girls who have a year out of their university or just before entering workplace after the school. They spend a year or 2 with us, and that's been really working well. Some of those young men are doing distance education with various universities, training as pastor or something like that. So that's another thing which we've done. We thought we were doing quite well so let's at least get going with church planting in Slovakia. It's a new thing. It's going to be tough, but you've seen the new dots that they were starting to appear, and we're really, really thankful for those. What did happen over the last 3 years, probably, also the COVID contributing greatly, is that we thought we're training up new pastors, new guys and teams, but what we've seen happening in the denomination that quite a few younger generation pastors resigned as pastors of their churches for various reasons. And so that meant these young guys that we thought would be church planting have taken up positions and pastorates in these churches, which is a great thing. It's good for the kingdom. and it's great that these churches now do have pastors. But in terms of our plans for church planting, we've kind of in one place after a lot of investment into these guys. So it's a good thing, but it's also something which we hope would be different. But Jesus is on the throne, so he's ruling in all these circumstances, and we're glad that these churches now have younger pastors who are more mission minded, who want to have these more settled churches, who don't like the idea of church planting, kind of turning that culture around and sending new teams. So that is a challenge for every one of these younger guys. Some of them are still bivocational, so there's a lot of support they need. As in terms of not everyone has their other job as compatible as mine was. I could just go and work and then go back and not care about the medical side as much. These other guys don't have such a job, so that's a challenge for them. But it's been a good way to go for quite a few. Not for everyone. It brings so much more stress to the others. So it's a mixed bag. So this is our church plant in Bratislava called Paradox Church. We started in Advent season. This will be the third Advent. So 3 years ago, and this was our first church weekend away. We started off with 10 people, and as you can see, there are a little bit more than 10. And this year, during COVID, we were blessed to grow a little bit more. What we've seen during this summer is that we've had new people come into the church every Sunday. We've not done anything special for that. We've kept doing what we've been always doing. Nothing super, geared towards that. It's just Lord has been bringing new people every Sunday since June. So every Sunday there's been someone who's been new, and a number of them have become Christians or came from a broken Christian backgrounds, and are in the process of becoming members. So this church in Bratislava really hopes to be a training church for it's a place where students come. So we hope to be training younger generation for ministry, either for church planting or for anything else. But also we want to be a church planting church itself. Whether that means that we again will move with my wife and family, or we will be sending others to plant churches around Slovakia. That's why we planted in the capital. So you can be praying for that. As you can see, there's mainly younger people, which makes it such a treat for us to be here. We really miss having more mature people in the church, and not just age-wise mature. There can be older people who are not mature, but in just being here with you, we really miss that. So that is one thing you can pray for. It's really hard for young people to be missionaries to an older generation. We've just received one Slovak lady, which she's lived in the States for 30 years. Now she's retired and retired to Slovakia. And so we're really glad to have a elderly missionary. So maybe that is something for someone from your generation to think about. Okay, so I can retire and maybe move to Slovakia to be a missionary to the greyheads, and so that would be wonderful if that happened. So, and this is the family. I think a year ago, with 3 children. Oliver is the oldest with 10 years, Carolina 9, and Ruben is 6. that might be it. You will probably learn a little bit more about us in the evening as well, but feel free to stop us and ask more questions. We are so thankful that Slovakia is on your radar, even though it's easy to overlook if you go with a finger on the map. It's a small place, but you've not overlooked that, and you've been really involved for decades in Slovakia. So thank you for that. We're really blessed, and we're really encouraged just to be here with you. Thank you so much.